Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and there we have it. The dominant force of the last couple of years of the CDL in Atlanta FaZe have confirmed their fourth player in their main AR for this roster after dropping Arcitys just a few days ago. SlasheR is going to be that man. After failing to make the World Championship this season on Los Angeles Guerrillas, he's fallen upwards into this team. What does this mean for the rest of the CDL? Is this team going to fall off massively after dropping Arcitys, as some predict? Are they going to get even better? Their firepower is absolutely absurd. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Big announcement here. More I'm sure to come on the way as well. Bottom right hand corner. That all that good stuff. This from FaZe. They do the perception. It's kind of like a behind the scenes documentary type thing. I was wondering at the end of this were they going to do some sort of announcement. I don't believe it was actually in the video itself, but it was shortly afterwards. We saw this from LAG, and when this happens you kind of know that it's about to come to fruition. We saw the other day there was kind of still some question marks being raised about this move that has been rumoured for a few days at this point, just because LAG, when they confirmed Arcitys had joined on that 3-year deal, they said SlasheR is still a free agent, a restricted free agent, or like I'm still part of the roster, and therefore we're looking to move him on. And at that point we'd kind of heard that FaZe had already finalised the deal. Maybe it hadn't fully, pen maybe hadn't gone to paper yet at that point. But we saw SlasheR a few days ago, right, he tweeted out the Thanos gif, like Destiny arrives all the same, and that's been SlasheR's kind of like, trope the last couple of years, because, well, obviously a dominant player during Call of Duty history, generally one of the best main ARs of all time, and I think generally newer fans in the last couple of seasons might not feel like SlasheR is that caliber of player, because Los Angeles Thieves in 2021, this season LAG, wasn't particularly pretty, but I do think that SlasheR could be exactly the type of guy that FaZe are looking for. We'll see that too in a second. He may not have been their first choice. I do feel like we'll see more on this in the coming days, because, they were reaching out to other players. There was also rumours, though, that, some of the players that were linked to FaZe is not because FaZe wanted them, but more that those players wanted to play with FaZe, and you can't really blame them, right? So maybe some of the players linked, Hydra, Pred, these type of guys, Sib even, like these players that could have been linked, right? And even Dashy was talked about. Shotzzy, we're pretty sure they wanted to go, but he was never going to go in the first place, so he was, of course, they just wanted to upgrade their firepower, right? These are some highlights from SlasheR, and they even get a nice video of him at the end here saying, I'm the new main AR for Atlanta FaZe, confirming that he will be the main. Cellium is going to be on the flex role, and then there's a big question, right, for this team this season, is that, okay, where is that going to fit in terms of the roles? Can Cellium run a flex? Because this season, arguably, was playing rather too slow, like it was making it a little bit difficult for Arcitys. He said that he felt rather uncomfortable on the map. Of course, look, I'm sure next year with the new approach, they're going to figure out a way to make it work. Cell made it work fantastically well back in Cold War in that flex role, and he can run it. Like, maybe honestly, the FaZe guys knew for quite some time they wanted to get rid of Arcitys, and therefore weren't really trying all that hard to actually make it work in their favour. But, yeah, look, still, he's going to be the main AR. That is one of the question marks here, but, on paper, the firepower is crazy, right? But those newer to the scene won't have known what SlasheR did, a few years ago now, where he was an absolute dominant force as the main AR, right? Where he kind of got the Thanos, nickname and all this type of stuff that he effectively gave himself. But even before the Rise days, going into the Rise days, Black Ops 4 100 Thieves, like, this guy was an incredibly feared main AR. The last couple of seasons since the CDL, OGLA wasn't a good year for pretty much everyone involved with that organisation. Next year on LA Thieves, he was actually pretty solid on Thieves in fairness, but the team obviously didn't give him that much chance to improve. The team blew it up and dropped him, and he felt very frustrated, and I imagine still holds some resentment to this day to JCap for making that decision at the time. Ends up on LAG, gets his one over effectively on Thieves by winning an event before they did, but in the end Thieves became the dominant force of the season and won the World Championship anyway. The Thieves versus FaZe matchup gets even spicy. We know the Drazah versus Simp thing, right, at the end of the World Championship. Now SlasheR versus Thieves, that makes things all the better. So this is the confirmation: Simp, aBeZy, Cellium and SlasheR. So firstly, we've got to ask the question, should they have made a change in the first place? Many will say they shouldn't have, and I honestly am kind of still to a certain extent in that boat. I feel like they could have stuck it out with this roster, but that's the thing. I said it many times in many videos, and people said, no, you're faded, they're not going to make a change phase. But I was saying, look, when things go wrong and a team starts to get seconds after winning everything, friction begins to develop, right? There's no doubt about it. That's what happened here, and yeah, Arcitys felt uncomfortable, but also FaZe, I guess, thought they can upgrade, because Simp, aBeZy, Cell, they know how good they are. Simp and aBeZy on their day, still the best SMG duo in the game. They're rapidly rising all of these guys into the top 10 players of all time in Call of Duty history. Cellium is obviously not too far away at this point, yeah, still the MVP, of course, of this entire season. This is, of course, an absolute main AR's dream, right? If you're a main AR, you go to bed at night wishing for something like this to happen. If you ask, any main AR in the league which players they want to play with, I think Octane was even asked not long ago, like, okay, who do you want to play with outside of your teammates? Because he would say them, I guess, firstly. And he said, well, you know, Simp, aBeZy, and probably Cellium. I think those are the three players he mentioned. Maybe not Cellium, but, you know, Simp and aBeZy are just immediately roll off the tongue of any main AR. So SlasheR, we know that, yes, his former teams can have chemistry problems. SlasheR can exacerbate those. Maybe that happens here. If already their chemistry isn't great, they get rid of Arcitys, hoping SlasheR will improve it. That could be a bit of a concern, right? Especially because of SlasheR's history with situations like this. But I feel like SlasheR's going to have unbelievable respect for not just these players and what they've achieved, and everyone knows that these guys are just dominant, but also this opportunity, right? Like, very few main ARs in their career get a chance like this, especially after the couple of seasons that SlasheR has had. So I highly doubt that SlasheR is going to, you know, cause incredible friction within this team. Maybe down the line, if he wasn't their first choice, those guys decide to move him on and put Cell to the main. That's a possibility, but I feel like for now, this is one of the best changes they could have made. But that was kind of what I was going to say. Should Arcitys have actually been dropped in the first place, right? And that's the big question mark to me. We know what Arcitys has done for this roster, but it's an interesting question. The pressure is on him, I think, to prove on Los Angeles Guerrillas that he can still be a great player and a top player, because I guess FaZe felt like they could upgrade. And in fairness, there were times where Arcitys' slaying wasn't so good. His KD on the year wasn't particularly spectacular. And especially, like, his Search and Destroy was okay. But this season, their respawn at times, obviously their grand finals performance wasn't particularly good. And so their Search and Destroy also wasn't as good as they would have hoped it to be. Now, SlasheR is a guy that in theory, like, you know, his shot is absurd on a main AR. Like, this guy should drop good numbers. In fairness, how many kills are there to really go around when you've got Simp, aBeZy and Cellium on the team? That's another question, of course, that why Arcitys' stats don't maybe look so good. And I'm sure the FaZe guys weren't just looking at the numbers, but I do feel like in the last couple of seasons, there is an argument to say that Arcitys could be upgraded in that position. And in fairness, they made 4 grand finals and won 0 of them. Can you really blame them, given the high standards these guys have, for thinking, you know what, something's got to change here, and we're going to swap out the weakest player on the team, and if anyone's going to get dropped, it was always going to be Arcitys. So, and also, like, okay, I'm saying I'm not really sure they should have changed, but if they were to change, and if they were thinking about it, they should just pull the trigger now, because the problem is, if you leave it a couple of months, that's what we talked about earlier tonight with Octane on the OpTic guys, is like, if they do leave it a little bit, then you lose the opportunity to get the player you really want, because SlasheR gets locked down to Boston or another team that wanted him, or even the New York Subliners, which was in consideration as well. But you know, of course, they lock him down here on FaZe, and now they don't have to worry about you know, trying to pick up a player mid-season when other teams and big name free agents might not be available for acquisition. But yes, SlasheR is on the team, so that's the question now. Should Arcitys have gone? That's going to be the big one. Should SlasheR have been the guy they go out and get? And firstly, I just want to say, because those who came along in the last couple of years won't really know what SlasheR did back in the day, and as I say, how feared this guy was, the end of Black Ops 3, Envy. At this time, he was even still at university studying for his degree, and he won the World Championship, came into next season Infinite Warfare, nearly went back-to-back. That season, he was an absolute dominant force at the World Championship that year. Always generally turns up against the best teams as well. Obviously, a big-time LAN player also, because the FaZe guys are always going to be good enough online to get into the winners bracket for the majors and stuff. It's that LAN play which sometimes let them down, especially in the grand finals and such. SlasheR is a big game player. He's the guy that turns up in the grand finals against the best teams, so that might be one of their considerations as well. Went back-to-back on Rise back in World War II. Black Ops 4 went back-to-back again on 100 Thieves. Since then, since the franchise era has come around, SlasheR really hasn't been so good. But how many other main ARs out there that are like leaders that can still slay? And that's the thing, when people talk about Crim and, you know, Clay and these guys kind of getting on in their careers, SlasheR I think is 27 going on 28. Like, he's also, you know, in the older side of the players, but he's still putting up good numbers, right? Okay, this season he had a 1.05 in the hardpoint, but he had a 1.2 in Search and Destroy over the entire season. Those are some of the best numbers in the entire league. He was a real monster in Search and Destroy this year, so pretty impressive numbers. Of course, like, nothing incredible, but yeah, these Search and Destroy numbers are particularly good, especially when you consider that was a surprising weakness for FaZe this year compared to previous years when they've been pretty much the best S&D team in the game. Wasn't the case this time around. He does, of course, get his event win this year, but the rest of the season was not particularly good, and that's the thing. You give SlasheR the keys, right? You give him the Infinity Stones, you give him Cellium, Simp, and aBeZy, and what can he achieve with these guys, right? Because look, at the end of the day, SlasheR has achieved a lot in his career with players that aren't necessarily up to these guys' caliber. You think of that Rise team, especially, you know, obviously Enable and Priest deserve some respect for 100 Thieves, but it's not like they're Simp and aBeZy caliber SMGs, and he won back-to-back tourneys with those. So he's definitely got a great leadership style when it works and when the team respects him, right? And this is the thing. If Simp, aBeZy, Cellium give him the time of day and really respect him as a player, right, and what he's achieved, and the respect is mutual, which of course it will be from SlasheR's case to those guys, then I think this team could really work. If they go in here, Simp, aBeZy, Cell, and think, you know, this isn't really the guy we wanted, we kind of wanted Cell on the main and to bring in like another star SMG, put Simp to the flex or whatever, then things get a bit questionable. But if this team goes in with full confidence they can make it work, like, I think SlasheR SlasheR can be the IGL they need. Of course, he's a very intelligent player getting to the older part of his career. I don't think he's going to be blowing this team up. It might be more of a matter of whether those existing guys end up meshing with SlasheR's leadership style and whether that works out. But I do feel like that they should be able to find a way to make it work. And on paper, I think the firepower in the roof of this ceiling does actually go up. The other part of this, of course, which is pretty funny and which might indicate the friction could eventually develop, is the fact that in the past, SlasheR and Simp have certainly had a go at each other about the whole snaking debacle, right? SlasheR's not been a big fan of the snaking that Cellium does, and there was even this thread from not too long ago where Simp and SlasheR were having a back and forth. Simp was defending Cellium, and then, SlasheR comes up and, believe whatever you want, though. We probably talked about this as some drama in a video at the time. But of course, nowadays they're on the same team, so SlasheR either has to kind of, get along with that, which I'm sure, he probably can muster up the courage to do so because he's teaming with Simp, aBeZy, and Cellium, the absolute dream scenario for any main AR in the entire world. And yeah, that definitely does add some fuel to the fire of potentially the FaZe versus Thieves rivalry as well, because Drazah isn't a big fan also of the whole snaking thing. So as SlasheR says, super excited to play with this organization, never been so ready for a new season to start. Can't blame him, right? It is kind of crazy that he goes from where he's been the last couple of years to getting this opportunity. But out of any of the many ARs that were possible for this role, I do think SlasheR was the best choice. The big question is, should they have got rid of Arcitys in the first place? Simp seems excited about it, whether this optimism retains, but I really doubt this team makes a change this season. I think if they are going to make a move, they'll wait this season out and then see how it goes. But I also feel that FaZe as an org and the way they've been going is just such a perfect fit for SlasheR, right? This guy's one of the perfect characters to play a villain in the league, right? The FaZe team doesn't really have a player like that, right? They're all kind of, pretty nice guys in general that don't really fit the villain role, but they've been so good that they've kind of assumed this villain role within the community, and SlasheR can play into that fantastically well. So it feels to me that this organization, it's kind of made for him in terms of where FaZe are at the present time and where they might potentially be. And the fact of the matter is, these guys aren't going to be bad, right? There's their floor, the floor of this team is probably the second best team in the game. I don't really think this team gets worse because last season, at least when you compare it to last year's results, I doubt this team is going to be able to manage what this squad did with Arcitys back in Cold War. But can they do better than they did last year? I think that's the case. Or maybe they don't make 4 grand finals, maybe they make 3 or whatever. But I think they win more than they did last year, right? I'd be incredibly surprised if this team does not win an event. I think one of the key pieces could be, though, the Crowder question, because Crowder, as of yet, I don't believe has kind of said, hello to SlasheR or anything. We don't know whether Crowder's going to be the head coach. They did have some time together on 100 Thieves as a coach AR duo back in the day, and that was obviously very successful. And with Crowder there to kind of facilitate the comms and make sure things don't get out of hands, I think that's a slam dunk good move, I think. But if there's no Crowder, that does raise my concerns a little bit more that potentially this could go wrong. But with Simp, aBeZy, and Cellium, the floor of this team, as I say, is going to be second. The question is, their ceiling is 1, their floor is 2. I honestly don't think, maybe they're the third best team or something, but I highly doubt it, to be honest. And if they are, they'll drop SlasheR mid-season or something and get another AR, but I just don't think that's going to be the case. So I know a lot of people would disagree with this, but I'm actually going to go for the hot take that this team is actually going to get better as a result of this SlasheR move. If the team commits to it and believes this is going to be successful, I think it can work. I think their firepower goes up. I think their search and destroy can get better. I think SlasheR can provide the same leadership as Arcitys did, given where he is in the career and the experience that he's had. Is SlasheR washed? I guess that's a question, right? Is he not as good now as he used to be? But even if he's not as good, he doesn't need to drop crazy numbers on this team given the firepower around him. And I think he can use his experience to great effect on this team. There are some question marks. There is, definitely some risk involved here. But compared to last season, I think this team does better this year than they did last year. Yes, last season they were the best team for a time, but they were always the second best team when they went to an event. I think they'll do better than that this year. That's why I voted the way I did here. But, is this team going to be better at its peak performance than at the FaZe team was in Cold War with Arcitys? That still seems doubtful. So I guess you can go either way on this one, depending on which way you define the question. But again, SlasheR in fairness even was on FaZe back in the day. So it's all come full circle. And even this tweet I thought was kind of, very poetic in a way. As Octane said during last season's Rostermania, the entire league is assembling the Avengers to take down FaZe. All that for a drop of blood, says Simp at the time. And of course, he ends up getting Thanos on his team instead, after that they actually did succeed in taking down the existing FaZe squad last year. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you were new as always. Take care, and I'll see you next time.